Now, I don't know about y'all, but I got some crazy family stories. We'll share some of those in this series. Today will be a little more serious, but how many of y'all got crazy family members? Come on. If you did not raise your hand, that's you. You're like, I don't have no crazy. You're like, this guy, and they're like, that's him. And so we all have crazy family members. There's different levels. Y'all know there's different levels of crazy. I won't tell you all of them, but there's different levels of crazy. There's like kind of crazy, and then there's like crazy. And so we got, like, my little guy, he's kind of crazy. Then there's other people that are, I won't mention names, that I know that are like crazy. And so as we navigate through this, wherever you're at, whatever your family situation or family dynamic is, I just want to encourage you that there's going to be something in this series. And what's not going to happen in this series is we're not going to take topics each week and just pull, we're going to kind of navigate this whole conversation of family. So be here every week of the series. If you're not here every week of the series, make sure you tune in online and catch up with what's going on, because we will reference things in the past few weeks. So as we were with our team a few weeks back, I'm really dreaming for the next couple of years of our church with our staff and our elders. I began to just write out some things of what I see our church becoming. And the things that our church used to be before COVID, and then how it went through COVID, and some of the cultural things and dynamic things changed, and now we're seeing, the openings of people saying, hey, we're coming back. We saw people last week we hadn't seen since 2020. And so we're excited about all that God is doing, but where are we headed as a church? What does that look like? And so I just wrote this thing about what I see Relevant Church as. And I want to read it to you, and it'll be kind of a springboard into our conversation today. Here's what I wrote down. I see a church that is the hub of its community, where schools and families call out for help in time of need, where people know hope is found and love abounds. I see a church where families find healing, where marriages are restored, where generational curses are broken and family trees are changed for generations. I want you to grasp these things today. I want Relevant Church to be a church that is diverse in class, in race, come on somebody, and politics. Like, you don't have to be on a certain side of the aisle to be a part of Relevant Church. We're in this thing for Jesus, and the other things are non-essentials, and we don't focus on those things. Yeah, come on. Where people reach across man-made boundaries and enemy-ridden lines of division to give a hand up and not a hand out, and where we fight for one another and not with one another. That's the church that I want Relevant Church to be. I want it to be a church that's messy, where leaders are servants and servants are leaders. And a church where we recognize the mess is a result of a greater enemy, one who seeks to steal, to kill, and destroy. And we run to the fire without the fear of getting burned. Like, we want to move toward the mess. A church that is positioned in the heart of its community and in the heart of its culture to speak truth to lies, to be light to darkness, and to bring hope where there's hopelessness. I want us to be a church that feels the pain of its community and knows the heartbeat of God, where no one is too far gone and everyone has a future. I want to be a church that takes mental, physical, and emotional health seriously. A place where thousands of people a year are on a journey toward wholeness in all areas of their life. I want to be a church that sees the next generation not as the church of the future, but as the church of today, where kids and students live counterculturally in their journey to never know a day without knowing Jesus, where young leaders are found, developed, and believed in, not talked down to. I want to be a church where people find and know their true identity is in Christ, where the lies of culture are exposed by the power of the Holy Spirit, where chains are broken and freedom is found, and we quit believing the lies. I want to be a church that leaves a legacy for the next generation, where leaders recognize it's what you leave behind that matters. What lives beyond you is greater than what lives in you. And so, hear me, if we're going to do that, we have to be a church that is always about Jesus. Always. Not about our own agendas. Sometimes my agenda doesn't line up with the agenda of Jesus. And guess what that means? I am wrong. This is why I'm so anti-church and politics. Politics don't belong on this platform. And I know that's offensive, and I know there's other churches that do it, but it'll never be on this platform because Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. We will not be roped into divisive arguments and beating up each other on the other side in the middle of an emotionally heightened crisis. We will stay focused on Jesus because Jesus is the only hope of the world. That's it. And so as we navigate uncharted waters and offend a whole bunch of religious people, God is opening up doors in our church as we speak. I'm excited even during this series as we tackle some things. We get to host in a few weeks Locust Grove High School's baccalaureate service on a Monday night because this auditorium is an opportunity for us to host the families, and I'll get to speak, and we'll get to love on our graduating seniors. Where are our graduating seniors at? Come on, let us know if you got graduating seniors. Next week, we got, during our 9:30 worship experience, family dedication. If you have a child under 3 years old, you never dedicated your child to the Lord. What that simply means is you're bringing your child and you're saying, as a mom and as a dad, maybe you're a single mom, maybe you're a single dad, but you're in a season of life where you understand Christ needs to be the center of your home and of your life, and you're going to do everything within your power with your spiritual family to raise your child to honor God, and you're going to live according to the scriptures. That's what child dedication and family dedication is all about, and we'd love to celebrate with you next week. That's during the 9:30 experience. During the 11:15 experience, we're honoring all of our graduates. You need to get signed up for that. We got breakfast for you and your families and all that stuff, and so sign up. Let us honor you because we believe in the next generation. Today, we have Evangel Universities on our campus. You say, what is Evangel University? It's our partnership with Relevant College and our Lead Now internship program. We're going to get back to launching back into our leadership development in young adults, 18 to 30 years old. As we pour into them, they can receive college credit at Evangel University toward a degree. You won't find a cheaper education unless you maybe are dual enrolled here in high school, but you can also dual enroll at Evangel. My 15-year-old is going to be dual enrolling in Evangel this coming year because we believe the next generation should be, listen, we should train up a child in the way he should go, not train down children. And so they're in our lobby. You can stop by right over here by the Heart and Soul room, and they would love to chat with you. If you have students who are 14, 15, maybe you got juniors and seniors who'd like to do an enroll, or you got people going into college. This past Wednesday night, we had our record attendance in our student ministry prior to COVID, and we were only 10 off from that record attendance the same week prior to COVID 2 years ago. And so in that, though, we have a young lady who's 19, 20 years old. She came through this church. She came through our student ministry. She's now leading a middle school girls group. Listen, 36 girls in her group, in one age group, one grade. I don't know if it's 6th, 7th, or 8th, I don't know. But she's leading a middle school girls group, 19, 20 years old. Why? Because we believe in a generation that's the church of today, not the church of the future. Here's the problem, though. Hear me. We live in a broken culture. Humanity is struggling at its core. And we're hiding all of our brokenness with all of society's trinkets and toys and whatever it is we want to find wholeness and healing, we think we can find, satisfaction in. We put our trust and faith in a lot of those things. And ultimately, here's who's suffering: the next generation. Because this last 2 years has wreaked havoc on the mental health of our culture and on parents, but even more so on the next generation. And so we try to just overcome it or mask it or find joy in things that this world has to offer. But write this down. I want you to hear this. We're going to springboard from this statement into this series. The root of brokenness is the brokenness of the roots. Where does brokenness come from? The root of the brokenness is from the brokenness of the roots. You see, now we got plants on stage. You're like, it makes sense, Pastor. And so listen, let me kind of walk over here and show you some stuff. I am not a plants person, but my wife, she loves plants. Any ladies in the house, you love plants? Any ladies in the house, you make your husbands plant them? I mean, I know what it means to lay down your life for your wife and all that, but every year they just die and you got to uproot them and replant them. Get them things that come back on their own. I think they're called lantanas. You just run over them with a lawnmower and the next year they come back. That's my kind of plant. I was uprooting, and then so I was planting some True story, my wife's out of town this weekend, and I was planting some flowers while she was gone. I hope I did it right. And but what I learned is if I want to take a plant out of its original environment, and I want to plant this plant into a new pot or a new place or in the ground, I have to be careful not to damage because if I damage the roots, then there's a lot less likely this plant will survive. And so when I pull it out, I have to make sure that I don't damage the roots. But here's the reality is you're going to damage the roots a little bit every time. How much are you going to damage the roots? And so here's what I need you to understand before we come. If I'm going to put this in here, I'm going to put all the soil in here. I'm going to put water in here. I'm going to do whatever I need to do depending on the plant, depending on whatever. And I'm going to sit it down there, and I'm going to be as delicate as I can. I think I broke one last night. I'm just going to go ahead and tell y'all first, and she's watching online. So, baby, I'm sorry. But I put it in, and then ideally you nurture the plant because in order for it to grow and flourish, it has to have the right environment and the right root system. Now, before we unpack this all together, I want you to write this down. The family is the masterpiece of God's creation. Now, I know you can say, well, what about mankind? Okay, I get it. God creates Adam, and he says it's his prized possession, but he said it is good. Then he says, but it's not good for man to be alone. It was incomplete. The masterpiece was just beginning until God made woman. Where are my ladies at? Come on. This is like, yeah, y'all gonna celebrate all the way to Mother's Day. You got flowers and he creates Eve, and he says it's very good, and then he blesses them, and he says, be fruitful and multiply. It's a blessing of creation. Husband, wife, children, multiplication, be fruitful and multiply. So I want us to start with this premise. I need you to understand. And I don't care if you disagree with me, you are wrong. That's my red coming out. I will draw a line. There are some non-negotiables for me. Family is not a social construct. It is a divine design by the creator of the universe. So when we seek to redefine family, we play God. Let's see, now y'all aren't laughing. Social constructs are things constructed by our culture. Family was not one of them. It was designed by God. A man and a woman rearing children, having grandchildren, being fruitful and multiplying. And when the family began to break because of humanity's sinfulness, the roots began to break. You see where I'm going with this? And now, culture has attempted in the brokenness of the family to redefine family. But hear me, when the family breaks, society breaks. Every time. Every time when family breaks, society breaks. It is the foundation of God's creation. It is be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over it. This was God's command to Adam and Eve. Not Adam, not Eve, Adam and Eve. The problem is our family roots are broken. So I just want to get back up because I can, y'all. And so the family roots are broken. And so as I revisit this conversation, if I want to, let's say you have a child. And this child is 5 years old. And this child's parents goes through a divorce. Guess what's damaged? Some of y'all are products of divorce when you were a child. If this child was born and had a father or mother missing from their life in any capacity, damaged roots. Maybe you're a blended family and you have multiple kids from previous marriages. You brought some brokenness in, didn't you? You brought some hurt. Maybe you've dealt with that, and praise God if you have, but before you dealt with that, there was brokenness. Single parent homes, maybe when you have a young child who's 5 and their older sibling rebels. Come on. You don't think it damages the root system? Any type of abuse, physical, sexual, substance abuse, it does not matter. It damages the root system. Any kind of trauma, What is trauma? Trauma is defined as something you expect versus what you experience. I expect my parents to be together forever, and I love them, and I believe they love each other, but then I hear them yelling and contemplating divorce in the other room, and now I'm traumatized, and I live in fear, and until that trauma is restored by somebody saying, hey, it's okay, let's navigate it, I have that damage. You see that? It might be just one point of damage, but there's at least some damage. I mean, we're trying to be delicate. We're trying not to let the kids hear, right? Because we don't want to, but we're not dealing with our junk. We're just managing, and there's some damaged roots. Can I tell you, if you simply grew up in a home with lack of a spiritual foundation, your roots aren't strong. And so here's what happens. We take this plant out, and who's 5, 6, 8, and gone through some trauma. And we have damaged roots. I won't mess, for the sake of the mess, I won't do it. And now this child goes to middle school. You think middle school is a great place for damaged roots to take root and grow? What about high school? We good? No. If we learned anything this week. What about college? See, we got students going off to college with damaged roots, and we wonder why they're potting themselves in some places that don't. Come on. Well, I worked so hard and I graduated and I just want to go away for 4 years. 4 years that most people end up regretting. Anybody want to raise your hand? And so we put ourselves in environments that aren't susceptible to growth. And so this series is designed, and so, okay, divorce. Now I go and I get, ready for this? I go and I get married to somebody who also has broken roots. See, you might want to write this down, send it in your notes, but I put it online. The right thing in the wrong place or at the wrong timing becomes the wrong thing. So marriage might be the right thing for you, but you better be whole, because two halves don't make a whole in marriage. Two wholes make a whole. But I want to get married, but I'm going to get in another dysfunctional thing. And here's what I've learned. Once you damage the roots, if you damage 50% of the roots, guess what? The plant has a lot less chance of survival. But I want you to hear something. And this is where I want us to go in this series. Do you know when the plant has the greatest chance of survival, even if the roots are damaged? When its primary root system is not damaged. So you can go through hell here on earth. You can come from broken physical families. You can come from abuse. You can come from brokenness of all sorts. But if you'll remember where your primary identity is, come on. My identity is in the fact that I was created by the creator of the universe. I can and am seen as a child of God who needs to come home to my Father in heaven. When I understand my identity, my primary root system is still strong. I can still win. I can still flourish. And so in the series, there they are. Okay, in the series, this is designed not just for parents, but also for grandparents, for singles, for students, for people who are like, what's my role? If you're a grandparent and you know a family and you've been through some stuff and you've learned some stuff and you love Jesus, don't check out on me. I've told you before, if you're 55 and older in this church, we need you. You are a gift to the kingdom of God. Because y'all been through some stuff. Like y'all saw some things my generation didn't see. Like when I talk to conversations with some young adults and I'm like, man, 9/11, they're like, what's that? Then I start to recognize like what you've been through. You know, I'm like, you don't know what 9/11 is? And then when I realized when I was born and when some of y'all were born, and I'm thinking, man, y'all been through some stuff. And if you're happily married and you've been in love and you've been married for 40 years, come on, we need you. We need you. You've been through some stuff. If you're 12 and you've been through some junk, your family's gone through dysfunction, you might be here with your family today and you're like, man, my family needs this. You're 12 and you're like, my mom needs this. Tell them, Pastor, I love you right now. Come on, tell them. I'm talking to you. Don't check out. Single, married. You're thinking about getting married. You better make sure your roots aren't damaged. You better make sure you're putting it in new, fresh soil that's ready to be watered, not some old dingy soil. Because I'm going to tell you, marriage is hard anyway. And so, this is to move people to identify our areas of brokenness and help each other rebuild God's foundation of family in this community, starting with us. So here's the springboard. Write this down. Families matter to God, so family matters. Families matter to God, so family matters. So Jesus is the Son of God, born on earth. You ready for this? Into a family. Raised by a family. Jesus didn't just, there he is, and everybody just, like he had a mom and he had a dad. Dad was a little confused when he was born. I'm just saying, if you don't know born of a virgin, dad's like, I don't get this, okay, but can you imagine being Joseph? Like, you got to be a man. You can't have a lot of insecurities. Probably didn't even look like him, right? I don't know. This is what I tell you, my mind goes when I'm reading the Bible, y'all. I'm like, he probably looked at Jesus and be like, I don't know, you don't got nothing like, you don't look like me at all, man. All right, we got to get through this. So I want to read a passage to you about Jesus. I told you this was supposed to be serious today. Y'all got to help me out. And I've used this passage before, this little snippet, and it's part of what we believe in our student ministry about Jesus growing in wisdom and stature and favor with both God and man. But there's some context to the story. And a text without a context is a pretext. For all my Evangel people, if you're in the house, I learned that at CBC across town from y'all, just saying. Luke chapter number 2, verse 41. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. You see where they're going? They're going to church. Write this down. Their spiritual family was a vital part of their physical family. In other words, they didn't see their physical family. They understood their physical family needs a spiritual family. They were rooted in the temple, in the courts. They were rooted in the spiritual development of their family of that day. It was not optional. It was expected. It wasn't just Easter and Christmas only and Mother's Day. It was a priority, a non-negotiable. Listen to me. They understood something. If you love God, you ought to be together with God's family. You should. I'm not here to beat you up. I'm here to challenge your thinking today. So the question I would ask you, and I would ask myself, and I would ask anybody, whether I'm a pastor or I'm attending, or whether, here's the question we all should, which of these statements describe how people may respond to you when you are or are not at church for a season? Do people go, where were you last week? You never miss. I thought something was wrong. Or is it more like, good to see you back. Haven't seen you in a while. Because see, COVID now, we don't have that excuse no more. I'm not saying it was just an excuse. There was some valid reasons and seasons, but now it's becoming, like apathy or laziness, right? And so my question to you is simply this. What is your commitment to the family of God? The expectation was that their physical family was an integrated part of their spiritual family. They went together. I'm a firm believer there are two types of families. There's a physical family and a spiritual family. You ought to be rooted in both. And here's the problem. When the physical family is uprooted or damaged or there's root system issues, then where do you find healing? In your spiritual family. Here's the problem. Most people in our culture, here are their two families. Ready? Educational and recreational families. The school's the center of your life, not the church. That is not the way God designed it. Sports, recreation, the lake, your kids playing whatever, that's the center of your life. That is not the family the way God intended. I love my Atlanta Falcons, even though, and I love the brotherhood. I love that whole line, but come on. It's got to be deeper than that. It was a priority to Jesus' family. The Son of God was in a family who was in the spiritual epicenter of the day. It says this, goes on to say, after the festival was over, this is funny to me, I don't know why. While his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. but they were unaware of it. You know God's got a sense of humor. He gave them to Mary and Joseph, and they couldn't even keep up with him. Thinking, this is even funnier, thinking they were in there, he was in their company, they traveled for a day. Not like they pulled out like, where's Junior? No, like they went from here to like Pennsylvania in today's terms. And they're like, hey, we missing somebody. Then they began looking for him among the relatives and friends. Now, wait a second. The whole family, like this was like cousin Billy and Aunt Susie and whatever. I mean, this is the whole family. Write this down. Even though Jesus was perfect, his family was not. That ought to give you some hope today. You're like, we can make it. 2 times this has happened to me in ministry. One time I was in student ministry, and I was over to the service, I was over a bunch of stuff, and I was over seeing the serve teams and everything. We were locking up one day, and there's just random kids still in the building. So this new family began attending our church like 4 weeks prior to that, and they had like 21 people. They had 2 van loads. They pulled off and left like the 6-year-old. He didn't know. He just sitting there. He almost acted like it had happened before. I'm just saying. He was like, happens all the time, He didn't even, we're freaking out. Like, whose kid is this? He's like, nah. He didn't even have an iPad, y'all. I'm just saying. And then there was one time I was sitting over here. Julie reminded me of this past week. It's in the old auditorium. I'm sitting here. And it just happens to be the day we're in the middle of a series. I'm talking about sex. And right here, it's like the 2nd or 3rd or 4th service, whatever. This kid, like 4 years old, 5 years old, by himself. Mom and Dad done gone. They didn't even know. Thank God Jesus' family wasn't perfect. But the extended family was part of the journey, part of the spiritual development. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, you're like, uncle, he ain't doing it. I'm just simply saying, do you see God's design? And so, when they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem. Now keep in mind, they've been gone for a day. It's a whole day back. After 3 days, you see the pattern here. He gone. If you were here last week. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting amongst the teachers, listening to them, asking them questions. In all of this time, listen, Jesus had developed a hunger for spiritual things. What do your kids hunger for? You know what? Generally, kids hunger for what you put in front of them and teach them to hunger for. That's what they hunger for. And hunger for what mom and dad hunger for. You said, well, what about I try to raise my kids in church? I've tried to do that. Okay, but was it legalistic laws and rules, or was it a heart condition where we're loving and disciplining their heart? We'll talk about this later in this series. Was it about raising them and nurturing them to love and be passionate about the love of God because God was so passionate about them? Or was it about rules and regulations and being in church and doing all the things you're supposed to do because you're supposed to do it because that's what we're supposed to do because we're a good family and you're supposed to be a good kid? See, Jesus understood that his greater purpose was not of this world. And he also sought to understand the religious thinking and the cultural thinking of his day. Now, can we just pause for a minute here? Jesus was fully human. It's easy to look at Jesus and be like, I don't know, man. I mean, he was born as a baby. He had to grow up. He didn't just appear with a Superman cape. Yes, there were real supernatural things that were revealed to him by his Father in heaven, and through the power of God, he did some supernatural things. But Jesus was a man. Jesus was a boy. Jesus was a baby. He had to learn to walk, to talk, to eat, to work, to educate himself because he came as a man. He came as a child. He came as one of us in the flesh. And he, at 12 years old, had been in and around the temple enough that there was a passion and a hunger that had developed inside of him. So hear me, look, lean in right here for a second. Get your kids in church. If Jesus' parents had Jesus in church for the love, they didn't be like, oh, you can stay home, we'll just go this year. No. I hear it all the time. I have a teenager. He's 15, very close with he and his mom, my mom and I, whatever, whoever it is. Me and her, his mom and dad, me and her, okay. It's going to be a long day. But I need other spiritual leaders speaking into his life. He's here on Tuesdays all day. He's here half a day on Wednesday serving in the student ministry. I mean, he puts out more cones than I ever care to see in my life on Wednesdays. But he needs a student pastor and a leader and a young adult speaking into his life. Because there's going to be a day, listen to me, he ain't going to necessarily want to talk to me. And if Jesus needs to be in church, if Jesus needs to be connected to the spiritual, then so do my kids. And I know there's an excuse, well, my kids don't know anybody, or some of the kids there aren't Christian. Don't go there with me. Well, they're in church. That's a great place for non-Christians to be, because you know where else you send your kids? Most of y'all send your kids where there aren't Christians? Everywhere! Including 40 hours a week to the school. Even in Christian schools. And on sports teams. Well, they just don't think it's fun. They walked a whole day, y'all. Whole day. Their friends don't come. They have sports. They have a job. They just don't want to come. Well, when they get ready for marriage, I hope their root system is strong. I hope they know where their identity is found. They need spiritual leaders. I pray that Jace and Trey will have spiritual leaders who will nurture and nurture and nurture and nourish to keep the roots strong. That's what the spiritual family is for. I'm going to hurry. Let's keep reading. Luke chapter 2. Everyone who heard Jesus was amazed at his understanding and his answer. So he had grown and matured. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. Like, what? His mother said to him, son, why have you treated us like this? I'm just saying, like, it's got to be a delicate balance being Jesus' mom. Son, I mean, God in the flesh, I mean, your father and I have been anxiously searching for you. Mom, you ever been anxious about your kids? Oh, man, just look at Jesus' family. And I love Jesus' response. Why were you searching for me? There's a pattern in Jesus, like people looking for him in all the wrong places. And he said, didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house? You want to be like Jesus? Where was Jesus? In his Father's house. So they didn't understand what he was saying to them. They're like, all right, let's just go home. I don't understand. Here you go. I'm about to make it real easy for y'all. You ready for this? Lean in. Family is hard. But family matters. Anxiety of marriage. I mean, could you imagine? You 2 days without your child. You don't know where he's at. He's sitting in the temple. How many of y'all be mad if you lost your child for 2 days, but you just came in, he's just up here worshiping by himself? You'd be like, that's my boy. They didn't understand each other. I mean, it literally said they didn't understand. Like, geez, you're 12, man. I don't understand what's going on. But they didn't let it stop them, did they? Because it was a foundation of their family. It was the root system. And then children, lean into this for just a moment. Young adults, students, if you still live in your parents' home, now understand your parents may not be perfect. And the only way this does not apply, what I'm about to tell you is, if your parents ask you to do something that compromises your relationship with God or dishonors God, then that's the only time you should say no. But hear me. Then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. And his mother treasured all these things in her heart. And, you ready? Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. All I'm saying is Jesus' growth happened in the context of a family. A spiritual family and a physical family. And I love that Mary, Mom, I could preach this on Mother's Day too. It says Mary treasured all these things. What did Mary treasure? You listen, Jesus was still a kid. She still had to go through the teenage years, and while he was perfect and he didn't sin, she didn't know that. I can imagine that would be even like, you're dealing with the Son of God here. That's a whole nother animal you're dealing with. Like, how you gonna tell him he's wrong? Like, there ain't no personality test gonna help you with this one. Temperament, that temperament is ain't. What did Mary treasure? The process. Wisdom is not knowledge. That's not knowledge. Wisdom is knowledge applied. You understand that? It's spiritual discernment and decision-making wisdom. That's what wisdom is. It's decision. It's where I can look and I have a spiritual discernment. How in the world can we have wisdom? Wisdom comes from God. How can we have wisdom if we're not involved in the things of God? And understanding who God is, the nature of God, the truth of who God is. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. How do we have wisdom without understanding the truth? So how are you cultivating this? We hope to partner with you. We have an app. If you have kids, it's called the Parent Q app. Download it. Some of y'all did. You just never opened it. It's the lesson that they go through. It's questions at home. It's things it's a way to partner with you to help them reach their full potential. We have a whole resource center separate from the main resource center in the kids' wing to help you. Wisdom. Stature. Here's what I would say about stature. As they grow in stature, you better hope they've grown in wisdom. Because they're going to grow in stature. Look at him. He's all grown up. He's dumb as dirt, but he's grown up. He can't make a decision where to go do nothing, but he's grown. Look how big that boy is. Look how big she is. You see how that's such a fallacy. And favor with God. Listen, I want my kids to find favor with God. You hear me? You don't earn the blessings of God. You know that. But we sure can find and earn his trust. And with trust comes favor. I don't get to like nickel and dime God into my, okay, God, I'll do this, you do this. No. But when I find trust, to whom much is given, much is required. But he who is faithful in the little things will be given much. A little bit of favor, you're faithful, you get a lot of favor. And then favor with man. Let me just pause. This is not followers on Instagram or TikTok. This is not popularity with man. And it's not necessarily all men. There's a lot of people that don't like me. Most of y'all do. But I want my kids to have favor with God and man. And so at Relevant Church, here's what we say. We want to partner with parents to raise a generation that never knows a day without knowing Jesus. That's our mission for our kids. Not our job to raise them. But mom, you say, I'm a single mom. How do I do this? Well, listen, the roots might be broken. They might be damaged. But you know how you salvage roots? You put it in new and fresh soil ready to be fertilize your plant, and then you water it, and you're gentle with it. You know what the new root, you know where you find wholeness and healing for your family? Single mom, single dad, divorced parent, person who's got broken roots. You find it in your spiritual family. Delicate, sensitive, helping you navigate and take root. I think of that young girl who leads that student ministry group, that middle school girls group, man. I think of a student who's on our staff now, a young adult who's on our staff who came up, man. There's pictures of him when he was in kids ministry at like 9 years old. It's funny. Because almost 12 years later, he's on our staff part-time. He also has an influence on my kid's life. He's like 5 years older than my kid, but he's become one of my kids' best friends because he's got influence on their life. And you know what my kid's learning from him? Work ethic. You know, you ever try to get your kids to do something like, nah. But if he asks him to do something, he's like, sure, let's go do it. And you know what that's doing? My oldest is now having an impact on my youngest, who has a friend who came to this church and checked their kids and toddlers the very first week they were here some 9 years ago. And the toddler worker remembered the kid's name when the kid came back the next week. And they're still in our church. And then I think of another kid who was there early on day one or like 3 months in, and they found a relationship with Jesus, because they heard music playing down the street from their house because the new church had moved, and their kid is involved in serving and impacted, because we want to raise a generation that partners with parents to never know a day without knowing Jesus. And I'm telling you, it's possible. You matter and your family matters, and I want you to be a part of this spiritual family. If you have broken roots, you have a spiritual family in which you can find wholeness and you can find healing. So get to the good life in the fall when it kicks back off. There'll be some orientations this summer you can sign up and learn more about. Get to counseling, individual counseling, marriage counseling. Deal with your junk. Let's get the roots right. Because here you say, but I don't want everybody to know my business. Listen, your flowers are withering. Everybody's like, that thing's about dead. You can only hide it for some people. Like, yeah, watch out. You think you got it all together, but I mean, they're drooping. Let's get the roots right. That's what the spiritual family is here for. It's the potting mix. It's the new soil. It's the fresh soil. It's the delicate, soft place where you can put down your roots and you can reach your full potential in Jesus. To stop by and talk to the table, the ladies at the table at Evangel, and see, how can I get my kid learning and growing in their spiritual walk? Maybe dual enrolled, or maybe enrolled in a Christian college and pursuing their passion. Talk to your kids about this. Don't just assume that you got to do everything culture tells you to do when your kids graduate. Think counter culturally and watch and see if God doesn't start the process of changing your family tree. Would you stand with me? I want to pray for you, and I want you to come back next week because we're going to keep going in this series. I really was supposed to get y'all out 5 minutes ago, but all those stupid jokes. Would you close your eyes right now, and would you just say, God, help me to make that commitment to you. Help me to take root in your spiritual family and help me to deal with my junk. You say, Carl, this message today was for me. Just raise your hands. Come on, raise them up all across. Yeah. Man, I'm telling you, it's for me. Like, I even as the pastor of this church, I need the spiritual family. I need you. We need each other. We're not going to all know each other, but you're going to know somebody that knows where you can find wholeness and healing. Father, right now, for these hands that are lifted in this room and online at home, I just pray for the Spirit of God to help them to take their next step and their best step. Help them to stop by the prayer and care room and figure out what it is that they can do to get involved in the good life or counseling or celebrate recovery or somewhere they can find wholeness and healing. Maybe they've been through a divorce. They need divorce care. Maybe they've lost a loved one and they got grief in their life. They can join Grief Share. Whatever it is today, give us the courage and the audacity, because our next step is our best step. Change family trees, I pray, in Jesus' name. And everybody say it with me, amen.